Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 121 of the CUInsight Experience. This episode is brought to you by our friends at CUIs, the leading talent development provider to the credit union industry, and I must say, longtime friends of ours here at CUInsight.com. So, after listening to this episode, head on over and check out the CUIs podcast also on CUmanagement.com. It is great content from thought leaders inside and outside of credit unions. I'll tell you, it is one that you don't want to miss. My name is Randy Smith. I'm one of the co-founders of CUinsight.com, and I'm lucky enough to have conversations with the amazing people who make credit unions great, and I get to bring them to you. I pick their brains and see if we can't find a few nuggets that we can all learn from. My guest on today's show is Greg Mitchell. Greg is the president and CEO of First Tech Federal Credit Union out in Oregon. Greg is an interesting guy to talk to. When your members are made up the people who work at many of the largest technology companies on earth, I'm sure there's a certain expectation that your credit union stays innovative too. My guess is they have a certain expectation of service that they expect. And I will say that over the years, First Tech has led the way there. So we talked a lot about strategic innovation and keeping purpose constant to make that material difference in both the lives of your members and his team at First Tech. Greg shared some great leadership lessons that he's picked up in his career journey. I appreciated his willingness to sharing even some of those struggles along the way. And I will tell you that after we were done recording, he had to jump on a panel, or he was jumping on a panel to speak with young leaders in the credit union movement throughout the Pacific Northwest. So just a great guy to talk to, and his willingness to share was pretty awesome. Of course, we wrapped it all up with the rapid fire questions. I enjoyed this conversation. It was a first for me with Greg, but hopefully not the last. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Greg Mitchell. Enjoy. Greg, welcome to the show.
Great to be here with you today. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too. There were so many directions I felt we could go. I was doing a little homework before our conversation, and one of the reoccurring themes I noticed was the idea of making a material difference in the lives of others. Like, what does that mean to you? And I would say both day to day, but also for the other leaders out there when you're thinking strategically for the credit union.
Yeah, I think it means really, to me, it's everything. And it becomes a center point for this cycle of goodness. We call it this virtuous cycle of goodness, where team members come to work generally with a desire to help. If you look at most credit union professionals, they're in this business because they want to help members. They want to help people in the community, and they want to live a fulfilled life. So we align that with members who really want to connect, whether it be digitally, over the phone, in branches, wherever it is, with somebody who really cares about them in a very genuine and real way. So we're aligning the desire and need of team members to make a difference in the lives of members and others, with members who are really wanting to connect with people that are good, and really elevating the spirit of the team member by going beyond just member service and getting involved in the communities. So that what happens for us is, we have this engaged workforce of team members who are here to make a difference. We have members that are craving that, getting the benefit of that, realizing value in that, and appreciating that through a deepened relationship with the credit union. So our team members feel great about that. And then their spirits are elevated further by getting involved in the communities. We have 35,000 hours a year of volunteerism coming out of First Tech.
That's
so
fantastic.
That team members feel like, wow, I'm doing something at work. I'm being recognized and appreciated by my coworkers. I'm giving of my heart, my time and talent in the community. And we elevate the spirit of our team members. We elevate our communities, and we elevate the spirit of members. And if you look at demographic changes, people today, want to connect with people who get it, who care, who are genuine, and who are engaged. So it's true to the values of a credit union as a cooperative of members coming together. It's true to the interest of the human, the employee, and it's true to the interest of members. And at the end of the day, it makes a big, big difference in the lives of, tens of thousands of people.
Absolutely. It's really cool. It reminds me, I was having a conversation recently with Juji Highland from the foundation, and she was talking about meeting people where they are, right? And that to me is, when I was listening to you, I'm like, it sounds like that's what your team does. When you mentioned demographic changes and, different communities, there's different needs. So a place that I was excited to ask you about, when I hear First Tech, it's even in your name, tech, I think about innovation in our space. So a couple different questions on this, because we've seen a ton of innovation inside credit unions as well as all around us. So was the idea of innovation, that kind of pushing things forward, something that was always important to you, even when you came to First Tech? And, how has that served members, especially over the past few years, right? Like where we've had to move to a much more virtual experience at times.
Yeah, I think pressing innovation comes from our heritage, having the privilege of serving initially the employees of Tektronix and HP more than 60 years ago when those companies started, and now having Amazon and Microsoft and Cisco and so many others. Tech is a core part of their DNA. And to respond to their demands, we've needed to be innovative and relevant on an ongoing basis. But earlier on, First Tech, believe it or not, as a credit union, was the first financial institution in the United States to offer online banking. So it caused some big corporate players to see, credit unions as innovative and caused them to deepen their relationship with our organization and ultimately allowed us to win. And now it means, from a First Tech perspective, how do we continue to remain relevant in the eyes of our members, giving them the types of solutions they need to lead their lives. And while we're not leading edge and don't aspire to be leading edge, we are able to deliver the types of solutions that our members need, when, where, and how they want to consume them.
That's such an interesting thing, because your membership is literally the leading edge of it, what they're doing a lot of the times day to day. So you probably have to be a pretty fast adopter just to meet their expectations.
Yeah, you have to be a fast adopter, but sometimes credit unions and others become overwhelmed by thinking consumers are wanting more than they really are. At the end of the day, consumers want an online and mobile banking platform that allows them to deposit a check, to withdraw money, to move funds, and do things that are basic. It doesn't need to give you a back rub and pat your head at the same time. So part of what we try to do is be selective on where we go so that we're able to sort of get the job done for our members without traumatizing them with a level of innovation and change that's hard to consume.
So do you internally, this is completely a scratch my own itch question now, do you internally, or do you or your team have a process that you go through to vet out and say, okay, you know what? Nope. We can let Amazon do the grocery delivery. We don't need to add that through our app or something. But like, to figure out what you're seeing out there is relevant and fits into the service that you're trying to deliver, and others that you're like, that's just not in our wheelhouse.
It is. We try to do a fair amount of primary research to understand, what is it the members really want? Where can we excel? And we recognize that even though we're of scale with about $15 billion in assets, we're still very small relative to most companies. So we've chosen to adopt a strategy of integrating, through APIs, cool technologies that we can bolt onto our online and mobile banking platform, or our omni account activation and online enrollment activities. So it allows us to be relevant, to innovate, but innovate as a collaborator as opposed to a pure technology creator.
The idea of collaboration with technology, I think of even CUInsight 13 years ago, we had to pretty much build everything to do this digital website experience. Now we plug everything in. It's and we can change things very much on the fly once you do a little bit of research, right? So
it's like you've returned to that box of Legos.
It's exactly, I love that analogy. That's exactly it. What has you most excited looking forward next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the next 10 to 15 years. So there's going to be a level of change and transformation. I think COVID created many, many challenges, but it also created a number of gifts for financial institutions. It accelerated the digital adoption and really rewarded those enterprises that invested early and created a great experience for consumers. And I think one of the things that excites me is the way our members responded and the way our team members responded and how that positioned us for the future. The future is bright, and there's a pretty solid alignment of this connection of technology and heart, which is really what the American consumer is looking for, is a place that can give me the things that I need digitally, but also a person who really connects with me, has deep insights on product and services, and can meet me on a personal level as well as a digital level to help me lead a more successful financial life. And I think credit unions are uniquely well positioned to do that.
Absolutely. This is a question that I've been asking quite a bit this year. And you won one of the largest credit unions out there. There's always a fire to put out, I'm sure. So any hacks, I guess, for the listeners out there on how you make sure to still have that space to think strategically? I think so much, it seemed like, let's say a year and a half ago, we heard people saying, well, you just had to scrap your strategic plan and get through COVID. But at some point, we all had to start thinking forward. So anything that you do to make sure that you're really have that time and that space to have the strategic outlook?
I think for me, a little bit of the time and space is on walks, or it's in my workshop as I'm building furniture. It's just a place of calm where I can apply different skills, engineer and measure thrice and cut once. And it just creates an opportunity to disrupt the normal reaction of the way we think and go into a different space.
So what kind of furniture?
I've built a bunch of things over the last year. Since COVID came in, it's allowed me to return to lots of stuff. So I've done cedar chests, some outdoor furniture, some new living room furniture. And right now I'm in the middle of a couple of Adirondack chairs made out of Oregon white oak. Yeah.
Wow. Now, is this something that you've done your entire life or something you picked up later on?
It's something I did many, many years ago with my dad and sort of stopped as I was progressing my career. As a result of COVID and shorter commutes, it's given me time to spend a little time to reconnect with the wood.
That's very cool. Yeah, all of us are not on the road like we were as much. That's for sure. So I'm a big believer in the idea that like who we surround ourselves, those people we choose to keep around us, help shape who we are. Who does Greg surround himself with, and how have they helped you in your career journey?
Yeah, I think my team here at First Tech has really been helpful. Some of the leaders, the team members, our board members here are really fabulous individuals. Yeah, they're strong corporate leaders and innovators in their own right, so they provide a fair amount of really good advice and counsel. I learn a great deal from my wife, who keeps me humble and grounded in many ways. And certainly, try to engage with other credit union CEOs of all levels. Tonight, I'll spend some time with a bunch of young credit union professionals throughout the Northwest who are meeting with CEOs to understand what they can do to advance their career. I'll learn a lot from that group.
Right? You'll learn as much as they probably are learning from you. That's a cool thing to be doing. Is that through the league, or that's something?
It's young credit union professionals up here in the Northwest. They annually host a roundtable of CEOs chatting with young professionals.
That's fantastic. It was one of the reasons now almost 3 years ago that I started the podcast, was the idea that I felt lucky that I got to go to a bunch of conferences and talk to guys like you and pick your brain. And so the idea of like having those conversations and sharing them with others, so many smart people out there, right? Yeah, I love that. I love that you're doing that. You mentioned it earlier. The credit unions, they're a different financial institution. It's easy to find purpose, right? Like in the credit union space. How do you make sure that you're still staying purpose-driven for yourself personally, but then also making sure that the organization, as it's growing, large organization, is still staying kind of towards its North Star purpose as well?
I think on a personal level, many people that know me, know that I grew up in a pretty low income family, and I'm blessed on many ways from where I came from. So I have this heart full of gratitude for people who have been there to support me and support others in the community. So it's chosen me to, choose to live a life where my purpose is about elevating people to levels of excellence beyond what they dreamed possible. Because I've seen life at many levels, and I know what's possible. I think what holds a number of people back is the power of their potential. So, I try to help them identify that and realize it in life. And what aligns for me within the credit union movement and our team members is really, how do I help the 1,500 team members within our family realize their full potential, and through that help them assist 680,000 members throughout our footprint in the world as they realize their potential. It allows me to sort of stay true to self, be genuine in every way I can be, and hopefully share some thoughts or experiences and maybe even a little bit of intellect that might make the world a better place.
Do you think, like you said, your upbringing and where you came from and where the success that you've had, does that allow you to be more empathetic to say some of the members that may be struggling, and make sure that we're focusing not just on maybe the most profitable folks all the time?
Yeah, it's been hugely beneficial. My parents were members of a credit union and routinely, because we were concerned about whether the lights would stay on, would have to call the credit union and get a signature secured loan. And I remember those things as a kid, and said, wow, how can I be there to help people who are struggling, and understand that? And at employee levels across the organization, sort of understanding, what it's like to be early in your career or later in your career, and sort of connect on a more personal level. Fortunate enough to be able to talk to just about every employee here at First Tech on their birthday. So I make a point of calling everybody and just sort of connecting to see how you're doing and what can I do to help you continue to grow and be your best self. So I learn a lot from that, and it allows me to sort of connect on a personal level within a large organization.
Yeah, that's impressive with that many employees.
The gift goes to me. I am blessed by those conversations.
Awesome. Very cool. Big picture question, blimp level. Is there something that you believe credit unions need to do better, stay relevant going forward?
Yeah, I think part of what we need to do is believe in ourselves and be bolder and more confident. I think sometimes we get caught up in, fear, the level of disruption from fintechs, from embedded tech firms, from big tech, from larger banks, changes in consumer behavior, difficulties in hiring employees. There's lots of things that can cause people to say, hey, this is overwhelming. I can't do it. I'm just going to sort of stick to my knitting and hope that this goes away. I think credit unions of all sizes can do a better job of sort of feeling the fear, acknowledging what's going on out there, and becoming bold. Because whether you're $40 million in assets or $15 billion in assets, you have the ability to deliver transformational experiences to the consumer, to the member. Size does not matter. What matters is what you believe you can do. So believe.
I just was making a note. I think I know the title of this episode, so that was good right there. I'd like to move on to your career journey. Do you remember that moment when I was kind of looking at your bio? You looked like you started more on the banking side of things and came over to the credit union side, but do you remember that time where you were like, credit unions, this is where I want to be?
Yeah, it wasn't intentional. I was recruited away from a commercial bank environment, but because I've been a member of a credit union since I was 17, when I was in the Coast Guard, I was familiar with it. And my wife was a branch manager and a loan officer within a credit union before we were married. So I was sort of exposed to the culture then. And when the recruiters were knocking on the door, I thought, this could be an opportunity to be my best self by using the credit union charter and the long-term focus of sort of strategic planning, not necessarily worried about quarterly results, but worried about long-term benefits, my desire to make a difference in the communities, and really leverage, again, my identity with the purpose of a charter and do something cool. So that caused me to say, hey, credit unions really work well. And again, knowing the type of board that we had here at First Tech and how supportive they were, it was pretty easy for me to say yes.
So what was the inspiration to take the gig as president and CEO of First Tech, and how over the years has the inspiration changed at all?
Yeah, I think the inspiration to take the job was really the board and the quality of the board and knowing the seg base that we had here at First Tech. Amazon was growing. It's continuing to grow, Microsoft, HP, and others. So, there's a a pretty strong and uniquely captive market that's available to First Tech. So things lined up, great board, great market opportunity, great people, some scale, and we could do some great things. So over the last few years, we've had some fun growing the organization, generating some strong earnings, giving back to the community. And I'm so grateful to all the people within this organization and the board to make that happen. I just drive the boat. Other people are doing the work.
Love it. Is there something your team has heard you say so many times they can finish your sentence?
Every team member at First Tech could follow the sentence of the best is yet to come. Yeah, they hear that as I sign off on all of my correspondence. I write things with the best is yet to come, because tomorrow is always bright. With the things that we do today, the best is yet to come.
A glass half full guy, I take it. So.
3/4 to 7/8 full.
I love it. Is there a myth about being a great leader that if you never heard it again, you just think it's dead wrong? You wish you'd never heard it again,
I don't know. I mean, there's some folks that think to be a great leader or to run a mid-sized company, you need to have the right pedigree and the right degree. And, those are just falsehoods. What I think you need to be a good leader is a genuine heart, a desire to help other people, and a desire to serve. And I think if you look at the best leaders through time, presidents, business owners, others, it's really folks who are humble and who really want to serve and help other people grow and prosper.
We talked about it earlier, building furniture. Outside of credit unions, what does Greg do to recharge? And what does that work-life integration look like to you?
Yeah, since COVID, it's a little bit different. Pre-COVID, it was, a lot of travel, a lot of time at airports, pretty long days and long commutes. And I think as we get through COVID, some of that will return, although our business model has changed. And I think the level of travel will be a bit different, even in a post-COVID world. But now it's, try to get home, carve out some times on the weekend to take a long hike or spend some time in the shop, do a fair amount of reading and learning just to relax and keep the saw sharpened intellectually.
Now I'm more excited about a question that's going to be coming up here soon. So wouldn't be the CUInsight Experience podcast without a few rapid fire questions. So the questions are rapid. Your answers don't have to be. Is there something along the line, whether life or your career, where you said no to it? Maybe you had a decision to make and you said no. But in hindsight, looking back, you're like, I'm sure glad I did say no to that.
There have been many times where I've said no. I think in the commercial banking arena, when pressed to join the market in the subprime space and to start to originate more mortgages, and where we knew it was wrong, it was absolutely right to say no. And I'm really glad I said no for a whole lot of reasons. I think some of the best answered prayers are no answer.
The unanswered, right? Yeah. So is that something as you look back earlier in your career, did you always have the ability to, make that call that felt right with your gut? Is it something that you got more confidence as you grew? You're like, after this, you're going to be speaking to young folks, right? Who are earlier in their careers.
I didn't always have the confidence to say no, because like many other leaders, particularly those that have come up the way that I did, I think you find that many leaders at their core sometimes feel that they're a fraud and that it's going to be discovered that they don't have all the answers and they're scared like everyone else. And that's just the truth, that most leaders feel that way. And I went through some leadership training programs many years ago and got some assessments from people and learned some things that caused me to believe that I wasn't a fraud and that what I was doing was right and that my purpose was true. So it allowed me to be more confident in making decisions that are sort of true to my North Star, which tends to be a values-based North Star.
So let me ask you this, because you coming up, just from what, this conversation, what I'm getting, and I feel similar about myself as well. My guess is early on in your career, you were probably somebody who got a lot done. So like being a manager or leader or CEO, you were an employee of someone else and you probably were something. When you made that transition over, I know that's a place that sometimes I remember talking to a friend who was a recruiter once, and they were talking about like the toughest thing to know if somebody can do is be the head coach. Like they could be a great assistant coach, but can they be the head coach, right? When you had to start, if you want to say, leaning on your team to be in a bigger organization, was that an easy transition for you?
It was a hard transition because particularly when I was doing that, I wasn't as confident as I am today. I was that guy who was sort of feeling like a fraud. Am I right? Am I giving the right guidance? Because it's having a real consequence. Your decisions are having a real consequence on the lives of other folks. So it was hard to be in a position where you're questioning, but needing to make some of those difficult decisions. I think what's helped me a lot as well is I had the privilege of serving for 24 years in the Coast Guard and dealt with things and made decisions that had a real consequence and sort of have a history of what happened in those circumstances to fall back on and give me a little bit of perspective against some of the things that I face today.
Well, thank you for your service. As a scuba diver, I hope to never see the Coast Guard. So that probably means something's going wrong. Has there been a recent purchase that you made that you didn't know you need, but now you're like, couldn't live without it? I know over COVID, a lot of people bought Pelotons and puppies, it seems like. So
I bought a drill press recently. Never thought I needed a drill press, but it's become very helpful.
Your favorite new toy, huh? There you go. Well, what was Greg like in high school? Any memorable trouble that you're willing to share?
No memorable trouble. Pretty introverted guy. Was not a college-bound person. Sort of an average student, but involved in scouts and DMLA and a bunch of other external activities. And I'd characterize as unimpressive high school guy.
Do you still consider yourself an introvert?
I still consider myself an introvert. I score on an introvert scale. I can be outbound and extroverted, but I like my quiet.
You join a long list. I am also the same way. So if I'm on, then I need time off. So there was a guy years ago, I was listening to a podcast and he seemed like an extremely outgoing guy. And he said he's a introvert that plays an extrovert on TV, basically, right? And I was like, I get that completely. So you mentioned reading to wind down. What are you reading currently? And is there that book that you've either gifted or you just think everybody should read?
Gosh, there's so many books. I just finished reading at the encouragement of some of my team members, Boys on the Boat, which was great. Very helpful, and actually used some of the teachings from that book in a leadership meeting earlier this week about swing. And finding that place where really everyone's rowing together in alignment, and they create this level of cohesion on the team where great things happen. So use that. World's Greatest Salesman by Og Mandino, really powerful book. It can be transformational in your life. Requires us a little bit of work. Other books that I use a lot in conversations with team members are the 4 Agreements to help people have better relationships at work and better relationships in their family lives. So I use that book quite a lot.
Adding to the reading list. I love it. So the random question, what's that greatest album of all time? The one you can listen to from front to back still.
Gee, it's been a long time since I've listened to an album.
Absolutely. We don't do it anymore, right?
Yeah, maybe Eagles' Greatest Hits.
That one's been mentioned often on this show, to tell you the truth.
Has it been?
Absolutely.
Sometimes I talk about investments that are like the Hotel California. You can always check in, but you can never check out. So you got to be careful.
I love it. There's a question that I don't send in advance. When you hear the word success, who is the first person that comes to mind and why?
For me, it's spiritual. It's Jesus Christ as a success person, because it's a person of humble origins and beginning who was able to bring together a bunch of people and a lot of miracles to do some pretty transformational things around the world that were purpose-driven.
Thank you, Greg, for being on the show. I greatly appreciate you taking the time. This has been a lot of fun for me. The last question I have for you is, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share or asks of our listeners?
No, I just encourage folks to really believe in themselves and their potential. As human beings, particularly humans facing the challenges that we face today, we can either become, overwhelmed and defeated, or in some cases, a leaf being blown about by the winds of change. Or we can choose to reconnect with that 7 or 8-year-old or 9-year-old boy or girl within us who believed that all things were possible and really ran like the wind and believed that they were the wind. And I challenge everybody to say, hey, where am I? What happened to that 7 or 8 or 9-year-old boy or girl? And how do I reconnect with that? Because I really am the wind, and I have the ability as an individual to transform myself from that leaf back to the wind. So what does it take to do that? And challenge yourself to become the wind, and amazing things will happen.
That is the perfect way to wrap up. Thank you again. We will link to everything we talked about in the show notes, the books and everything else. If people have more questions of you, what's your poison? Email, LinkedIn, Twitter?
It's okay to reach me by email. It's greg.mitchell@firsttechfed.com, and encourage people to reach out.
That is fantastic. I appreciate it, sir. Thanks for having this conversation. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and stay well, my friend.
Thank you very much. And thanks for hosting us today.
Before we go, I would like to thank all of you for listening today. Thank you for allowing us to have this much fun doing what we do. And once again, a big thank you to Greg for being on the show and sharing those lessons learned, over the course of his career with all of us. And finally, a big thank you to our sponsor, CUIs. As I mentioned to start the show, make sure to subscribe to their podcast over on CUmanagement.com. It is one of my favorites and one that I try not to miss. How about that? A couple more things. When you're in the subscribing mood, don't forget to subscribe to this one, the CUInsight Experience podcast, on your favorite player: Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, you name it. We're there. And check out the CUInsight Experience podcast book list to find your next great read. Greg threw out a few that I'll be interested in today. Thank you all again for listening. I hope you have a great day, and be well, friends.